The skies above Virelon Prime were no longer blue. They were filled with black smoke and flashes of red fire. Ships burned in orbit, buildings crumbled on the ground. The once beautiful colony had become a battlefield. For 3 long weeks, the people of Virelon Prime had fought to survive. They were not soldiers. Most were farmers, scientists, and engineers. But they fought because they had no choice. The enemy was called the Karnak Swarm, a race of insect-like creatures that lived only to conquer. The Karnaks did not talk. They did not negotiate. They came like a storm, and they did not stop. Inside, an old science facility near the edge of the capital city, a group of survivors gathered. Among them was Ilera, a tall, silver-skinned alien woman with bright violet eyes. She had once been a respected scientist, studying deep space signals. Now she was the leader of the colony's resistance. She stood at a cracked window watching the dark sky. In the distance, she saw one of their last communication towers explode in a cloud of fire. Her hands clenched into fists. "They're cutting off the last of our signals," said a voice behind her. It was Relin, a young technician. His voice trembled. He was only 19 cycles old, but already looked years older. No more contact with the outer moons. No more calls for help. Ilera turned toward him. "We send one more, even if there's only a chance someone might hear." "But the council already said," Relin began. "I don't care what the council said," she snapped, then softened. "Just send the signal. Make it strong. Make it loud. Make it desperate." Relin nodded and rushed to the last working console. Sparks flickered as he typed, rerouting power to the antenna above. Ilera looked up again. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the Karnaks, ships waited like hungry predators. They had no interest in peace. They only wanted to erase life and claim territory. And the Galactic Council. They had done nothing. A week ago, a message had come from the Council. "Virelon Prime is a lost cause. We cannot risk war. Withdraw if possible. Otherwise, survive as best you can." But there was no way out. No ships left. No help coming. Ilera knew it. The people knew it. But still they refused to give up. She walked through the shelter, past injured civilians lying on mats, past engineers building weapons out of broken farming tools, past children trying not to cry. Then the message began to send. Relin read it aloud. "This is Ilera of Virelon Prime. We are under attack by the Karnak Swarm. Our defenses are failing. We have no escape. The Council has abandoned us. If anyone hears this, please. We are still alive. We are still fighting." The console sparked and hissed. Power systems were dying. The message looped 3 times before the tower above gave its final breath and collapsed. "That's it," Relin said quietly. "That's the last of our voice." Ilera closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't believe the message would change anything. But she had to try. For the people, for the children, for hope. Far away, beyond the neutral systems and forgotten trade routes, there was silence. A cold silence filled the edge of space known as the Terran Void. For 10 years, no ship had entered or exited. No signal had come from inside. Many believed the humans had sealed themselves off forever, wounded by betrayal and war. But somewhere deep in that silence, hidden behind layered defenses and shadow satellites, a massive warship slept in orbit, around a quiet moon. The ship's name was TSS Revenant. Inside, Captain Jace Ward sat alone in a dim control room. He was a tall human with storm-gray eyes and a scar across his jaw. He wasn't young anymore, but his posture held the weight of command. He stared at an old star map. Virelon Prime blinked on the edge of it, just a tiny dot surrounded by danger. Then, a soft beep echoed from a terminal nearby. The ship's AI, a calm voice named Argus, spoke. "Captain, a distress signal has reached the outer net. Non-council origin. Location, Virelon Prime." Jace turned slowly. "Play it." The message echoed through the silent chamber, static mixed with fear. "If anyone hears this, please, we are still alive. We are still fighting. Jace stood up, his jaw tightened. He remembered Virelon. He remembered the people. He remembered Alara. She had once helped him recover from an injury, years ago when humans were still part of the council. Her kindness had saved him. And now she was calling, out into the void. No one else would hear. The council had closed its ears. The galaxy had grown cold, but humans did not forget their debts. Jace walked toward the central command hub. Argus, wake the crew, prep the Revenant. The AI hesitated. Captain, this would violate standing orders. The ship is not authorized to engage. I don't care, Jace said. He pressed a hand against the center panel. Lights came alive. Across the massive vessel. Engines hummed. Weapons charged. Shields powered up. We go, he said. Now, the ship began to move, unfolding from shadow like a beast waking from deep slumber. And as it turned toward the stars, its engines lit the void. Back on Virelon Prime, Alara sat in silence as night fell. Fires burned in the distance. The Karnax had begun another wave of attacks, but above, hidden by clouds and silence, something ancient was coming, something no one had seen in years, something that burned with fury, with loyalty, and with a promise. A human warship, coming screaming from the void. The TSS Revenant moved through deep space like a ghost. Its black hull absorbed all light. Its engines were nearly silent. It was not just a warship, it was a warning built in steel. Captain Jace Ward stood on the command bridge. Around him, a small crew worked with discipline and quiet speed. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were handpicked, loyal, brave, and bound by honor. Beside him stood Lieutenant Ria Kai, the ship's weapons officer. She was sharp-eyed and calm under pressure. You're serious about this, Captain? She asked. The council won't, like us interfering. I'm not here for their approval, Jace replied. I'm here because no one else will go. Ria nodded. Then we go in fast and hard. The ship AI, Argus, spoke. Captain, we are 1 hour from Virelon Prime. Karnax forces detected in orbit. 17 warships, 3 hive carriers. Jace narrowed his eyes. Do they know we're coming? Negative, Argus replied. They do not expect a Terran vessel. Jace turned to the crew. Good. Let's make it a surprise they never forget. On Virelon Prime, the situation was getting worse. The Karnax had taken the outer zones of the capital. Their troops, creatures with hard shells and razor limbs, moved without fear. Their weapons tore through stone, metal, and anything in their way. Alara stood with a group of defenders near the old hydro station. Their weapons were weak, mostly repurposed mining tools and hunting rifles, but they held the line with determination. Every hour, more civilians were moved underground. Every hour, they lost another street. Relin, the young technician, ran up to her with wide eyes. The Karnax are advancing through the west gate. We'll lose the generator if they reach it. Alara wiped dirt from her face and looked up at the sky. Still no help. No sign. Only clouds and smoke. She turned back to her team. Then we hold the west gate. She didn't know how. She didn't know for how long. But they would hold. In orbit above, Karnax warships continued to circle. Their queenship, the command vessel, sat at the center, cold and massive like a dark mountain. Inside, the Hive commander, a creature known as Ziltheric, stood over a holographic map. His clawed limbs twitched as he studied the colony below. The alien resistance was slowing them down. Unacceptable. He clicked in his native tongue to his subcommanders. Send the final wave. Crush them. Then a strange signal flashed across their sensors. Something had entered the system. The Revenant dropped from faster-than-light speed in a flash of light. Its engines glowed faint blue. Its massive form spun into a combat position in seconds. Jace stared at the enemy ships. Ria, bring weapons online. Targets locked, she said, ready to fire. Send them a message, Jace said calmly. Let them know the void answers. The Revenant's railguns powered up with a low hum. Moments later, fire and steel shot across space, slamming into the nearest Karnax frigate. It exploded in A flash of green fire. The swarm was shocked. Their formation broke. No one had expected this. The humans had returned. On the planet, the people looked up. The clouds lit up like day. A sound echoed across the sky, a deep rumble, like thunder, or then they saw it, a dark streak in the sky. A ship, but not like the Karnax. This one moved with purpose, with fury. Relin screamed, "Look! Look!" Illyra turned her eyes upward, and her heart skipped. She had seen Terran ships before, years ago. But this one, it was different, sleek, powerful, covered in strange markings. A ghost from a forgotten war. She didn't know who was inside, but she knew what it meant. Help had come. Above, the Revenant sliced through the enemy lines. 2 more Karnax ships fell. Their queen ship tried to retreat into deeper orbit, but the IDI's human ship followed with speed no one expected. Rhea called out, "They're scattering. Keep pressure, don't let them regroup," Jace ordered. "They attacked innocents, they thought no one would care, let's remind them who we are." Drone fighters launched from the Revenant's bay. They moved like shadows, outmaneuvering the larger Karnax crafts and cutting them down one by one. It wasn't just a battle. It was a message. The void was not empty. Back on the ground, cheers broke out. People pointed at the sky. Children laughed. Elders cried. Even soldiers paused in shock as the enemy ships above began to explode in the sky. Illyra whispered, "They came. The humans. They really came." Relin grinned, full of emotion. "You think they got our signal?" Illyra nodded slowly. "No. I think they remembered us." Then the Revenant sent a message. It came through every broken console, every half-dead comm station, every speaker still alive on the planet. It was Jace's voice, clear and strong. "To the people of Virelon Prime, this is Captain Jace Ward, of the Terran ship Revenant. We received your call. We are here. You are not alone." Across the battlefield, the Karnax faltered. Their confidence cracked. They had not planned for this. They had not prepared for the rage of humans. The skies above Virelon Prime were no longer dark. They burned with light, with resistance, and with a promise. The Revenant had arrived, and the war was far from over. Smoke still curled from the broken buildings of Virelon Prime. Though the human warship had arrived and brought new hope, the colony was far from safe. The Karnax had not yet retreated. They were regrouping, planning. In the ruined city center, Illyra walked through the remains of what used to be a marketplace. The stone tiles were cracked. Burnt remains of merchant stalls lay scattered around. She stepped over a broken sign that once said, "Fresh synth fruit today." She carried a small data pad and wore a new communicator on her ear, courtesy of the Terran forces. It crackled every few minutes with voices from orbit or ground teams reporting enemy movement. Relin ran to her side, breathing hard. "We finished moving civilians into the underground tunnels," he said. "They're scared, but no one's panicking." Illyra nodded. "Tell them to stay there until we clear the area." Relin looked toward the sky, where flashes of light still marked distant battles in orbit. "Do you think the humans can win this?" Illyra looked at him, then at the heavens. "I don't know. But they didn't come here to lose." Above the planet, the TSS Revenant hovered like a blade in the dark. It had already destroyed several Karnax ships, but the enemy queen ship had vanished into the outer system, on the Rui. Bridge Captain Jace Ward stood at the command display. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Argus," he said to the ship's AI, "status report. Enemy fleet scattered. 5 ships remain in hiding, likely regrouping for another attack. Surface resistance continues. Karnax troop clusters are moving through southern ruins." Jace tapped his fingers against the edge of the table. "They're planning something." Lieutenant Rhea Kai approached, her face grim. "They don't fight like this. Karnax don't retreat unless ordered, which means their queenship is still in control. Then we find it," Jace said, "and we take it down before it unleashes something worse." In the southern zone of the city, where shadows fell long between half-destroyed towers, Karnax. Ground units marched silently. Their bodies shimmered with hard chitin armor. Their eyes glowed faint green in the dark. The leader of the pack, a Karnax general known as Thurkal, received a silent signal from orbit. The command was clear: hold the city, prepare for hive drop. Thurkal raised one clawed arm and gave the signal to spread. His troops disappeared into alleys, basements, and hollow buildings. They were waiting for their queen to arrive. Back in the human command center set up on the colony's edge, Jace stood beside Alara. The room was small, an old storage bunker, but filled with new Terran tech, glowing screens and maps. Alara pointed to a section of the city grid. This zone has gone quiet, too quiet. We used to get reports from survivors there. Now, nothing. Jace nodded. Could be a trap. Or something worse, she added. Hive grounding protocol. They could be preparing to bring their queen to the surface. Jace's jaw tightened. Then we can't wait. He turned to his team. We launch recon teams now. We find that drop zone and stop it. Rhea raised an eyebrow. If the queen lands, this planet's done. The Karnax won't stop until every structure burns. Jace looked around the room at his crew and the Virellon defenders. Then we make sure she never lands. At dusk, the recon teams moved out. Small squads of Terran Marines moved through broken streets, their armor dark and silent. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for Karnax activity. Alara joined one of the teams herself, refusing to stay behind. As they walked through the silent streets, a strange feeling filled the air. Not just fear, stillness, the kind that came before a storm. Suddenly, one of the drones beeped. Movement. Ahead. Contact. 10 Karnax. Moving east. Fast. The team took cover behind debris. Then the creatures rushed into view, quick and quiet, like shadows. The humans opened fire, precise and deadly. Bright blue energy bolts tore through the enemy, dropping them instantly, but one Karnax managed to run. Not toward safety, but toward a strange glowing device placed in the street. Alara saw it too late. No, it's a beacon. The Karnax slammed its arm into the device, and a beam of green light shot into the sky. A signal. On board the Karnax. Queenship, hiding near the system's edge, the signal was received. The Queen's massive form shifted inside her chamber. Her body, larger than any ship, twitched with energy. She was ready. Her time had come. Below on Virellon Prime, the ground began to tremble. Alara's team looked around in shock. What's happening? Someone yelled. The ground cracked. Stones split apart. From beneath, a massive pod began to rise, covered in organic metal and glowing with sickly green light. It's the Queen, Alara whispered. She's coming. The Revenant's sensors lit up. Surface disruption detected, Argus said. Unnatural seismic activity. Hive pod rising in city center. Jace turned to Rhea. Can we target it? She shook her head. Too close. To civilians, we need ground teams. Then we send them, Jace said, and I'm going with them. You sure, Captain? Jace's voice was firm. We didn't come to watch from orbit. Back on the surface, Alara's team fell back, toward the defense lines. The hive pod continued rising. Its outer shell opened slowly, revealing layers of biomechanical growth. The Queen had not yet emerged, but she would soon. Civilians watched from bunkers, terrified. Soldiers prepared weapons, unsure if they would be enough. Then a roar filled the sky, drop pods Terran Marines. From the Revenant above, dozens of pods fell from orbit like falling stars. They landed around the hive pod, opening to reveal armored troops. And at the center of it all, Captain Jace Ward, stepping out in battle armor. He looked at Alara and gave a nod. Let's end this. The battle for the heart of Virellon Prime was about to begin. The Karnax Queen was almost here. The humans had come, and between them only fire and fury would decide the fate of the world. The hive pod stood in the center of the ruined city like a giant wound in the ground. Its surface pulsed with green light, and strange organic tendrils spread across the broken streets. The air smelled of burning metal and sour chemicals. All around it, Terran Marines and Virellon defenders took their positions. They knew this would be the turning point. If the Karnak's queen reached the surface fully, Virelon Prime would be lost. Captain Jace Ward stood at the front, his black armor glowing softly with energy lines. His helmet was off, revealing his focused, calm face. Beside him, Alyra checked the power cell of her blaster. Her hands were steady, but her eyes held fear, not for herself, but for her people. "You've seen one of these queens before?" she asked quietly. Jace nodded. "On Thanos Prime. Took 2 full fleets to stop it, but we were too late. The planet died." Alyra looked at the hive pod. "Then we stop it here." Jace gave a firm nod. Together, above the battlefield, Terran drones circled the sky, scanning for enemy movement. The Revenant stayed in high orbit, blocking any Karnak's reinforcements from above. Inside the warship, Lieutenant Rhea Kai coordinated air support and relayed targeting. "Data to ground teams. Captain, we're tracking increased bioenergy from the hive pod," she said over the comms. "Queen emergence is near," Jace responded. "Keep orbital guns hot. If it starts to break out, we'll need everything." Understood. The hive pod shook violently. Cracks formed along its surface, and thick green mist poured out. The ground trembled as loud screeches echoed from inside. Karnak's warriors began to crawl out of side tunnels, defending their queen. The first wave came fast. Insect-like creatures with spiked legs charged toward the human lines. Terran Marines opened fire. Blue bolts lit the darkened streets. Virelon fighters joined in, their weapons less advanced but still deadly. Jace's voice was calm but loud through the comms. "Hold formation. Watch your flanks. Don't let them reach the pod." The battle was chaos. Roars, screams, explosions. But still the defenders held. Alyra ducked behind a fallen statue, aimed and fired at a Karnak soldier that leaped over debris. She hit its chest and it crashed backward with a hiss. Relin, crouched nearby, yelled, "They're trying to reach the core of the pod," Alyra replied. "Then we stop them here." She jumped up, following a group of Terran soldiers who were pushing forward. One of them handed her a heavier blaster rifle. "Dr. Alyra?" he asked in surprise. "Yes?" He smiled. "Glad you're with us." They moved together through the battle, Virelon and Terran side by side. Meanwhile, Jace was already inside the hive perimeter. His armor took hits from 3 different Karnak's warriors before he brought them down with clean, powerful shots. His AI displayed the structure of the pod on his visor. The weak point was at the top center, a growth node that pulsed like a heart. "Team Alpha, follow me. We're going in." They climbed over twisted metal and pulsing vines. As they reached the base of the hive pod, the ground cracked again. This time, a long arm burst out, sharp and black like obsidian. The queen was waking. Inside the Revenant, Rhea shouted into the comms, "Captain, the hive is opening. You need to hurry." "Copy that," Jace answered. He and his team placed high-powered explosives at the root of the hive pod. 2 minutes on the timers, he said. "That should weaken the base." Suddenly, a new creature emerged, a guardian, larger than the rest with thick armor plates and massive claws. It roared and charged. Jace stood his ground. He fired twice, but the creature kept coming. Then, just before it reached him, a bolt of purple light struck its neck, stunning it for a moment. Jace turned. It was Alyra. "I figured you might need a hand," she said. He grinned. Perfect timing. Together they fired again, bringing the creature down. The rest of the team finished planting the charges. With the explosives ready, Jace gave the order. "Fall back to the perimeter. Now." The team ran as the timers ticked. Down. Behind them, the hive pod pulsed faster. The queen's screeches became louder. Part of her head and torso had begun to rise from the center. A towering figure of bone, flesh, and alien metal. Jace turned just in time to see the charges explode. A wave of fire and smoke ripped through the pod. Pieces of the hive flew into the air. The queen let out a terrible sound, a shriek of rage and pain. Her body fell back into the collapsing pod, wounded but not dead. "Now," Jace shouted. "All units, focus fire on the core." The Revenant responded instantly. From orbit, a focused orbital beam struck the center of the hive. The ground lit up with blue light as the beam punched into the earth. The Queen screamed one last time, and then everything went quiet. Silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke rose into the sky. The hive pod lay in ruins. Karnak's bodies were scattered across the streets. Then, one by one, the defenders began to cheer. They had done it. They had stopped the Queen. They had survived. Illyra stood with Relin and Jace near the remains of the hive. Her face was tired, dusty but peaceful. "We never thought anyone would come," she said softly. Jace looked at her. "We never forgot." Around them, Virelon people hugged Terran Marines. Soldiers laughed, cried, and offered food and water to each other. No one cared what species you were. They were one force now, united by battle and by hope. From above, the Revenant sent a signal. Mission complete. The humans had come, and the enemy had fallen. The smoke from the battle still hung in the air. Virelon Prime was not quiet, but it was free. The Queen of the Karnak swarm had been defeated, her hive pod destroyed. No more enemy ships had appeared in orbit. The skies were finally clear. For the first time in weeks, there was peace. Inside the central square of the capital, people gathered. Virelon citizens, Terran soldiers, engineers, doctors, all working together. They pulled away wreckage, repaired shelters, and handed out food and water. Wounds were bandaged, families were reunited. Some cried, some smiled. But all of them knew one truth. They had survived, and they had not survived alone. Captain Jace Ward stood on a high ledge made from broken stone. His armor was scratched and stained with battle, but his posture remained tall. He looked over the city. The sunlight had returned. The gray clouds that had covered the skies for weeks were gone. The planet, once surrounded by fear and darkness, was now glowing with light. Beside him stood Illyra, dressed in simple robes with a Terran medic's jacket over her shoulders. She held a datapad showing the current status of the survivors. "We lost many," she said, her voice low. "But because of your ship, because of your people, we're still here." Jace nodded. "I wish we had come sooner." "You came when no one else did," Illyra replied. "That means everything." Far above, the TSS Revenant remained in silent orbit. From space, the ship watched the colony like a guardian. Inside, systems returned to standby mode. Drones patrolled the edge of the atmosphere, but no threats were seen. In the command room, Lieutenant Ria Kai monitored incoming transmissions. Suddenly, she turned toward the screen. "Captain," she said through the comms, "we're receiving messages, multiple, across all channels." Jace tapped his earpiece. "From who?" "Everyone," she answered. "The Galactic Council, news stations, civilian broadcasts, even Outer Rim colonies." Jace raised an eyebrow. "I guess they noticed." The footage of the battle had spread quickly. Someone, maybe one of the Terran drones or a Virelon tech, had recorded the Queen's fall. The images were powerful. The arrival of the Revenant, the orbital strike, the joint defense of two peoples. It all spread across the stars like wildfire. In the Galactic Council's central chamber, representatives from 100 species watched, the footage in silence. The same council that had once turned its back on Virelon, the same leaders who had voted against sending aid. Now, they saw the result of their silence and the roar of human action. A tall delegate with gray feathers, named Arvindal, spoke into the chamber. "We did nothing, and yet the Terran, they remembered." Another delegate replied, "Perhaps we were wrong to cut them off." Others shifted uncomfortably. The humans had returned, not as politicians, but as protectors. They had acted when no one else did. That truth couldn't be ignored. Back on Virelon Prime, people worked side by side. The line between human and alien was no longer important. Soldiers helped civilians carry supplies. Terran engineers repaired Virelon power systems. Even children played near parked war machines, their laughter a strange but hopeful sound. In a medical tent, Jace walked in to see injured fighters being treated by a mix of doctors from both worlds. He smiled when he saw Relin, the young technician helping distribute food. "Captain," Relin said, "we just got fresh water running again in the eastern quarters." "That's great news," Jace replied. "You did well." Relin looked down, a little shy. I didn't do much." Jace placed a hand on his shoulder. "You survived. You kept hope alive. That's more than most." Later that night, a signal from the Galactic Council arrived on the Revenant. It was marked high priority. Jace played the message. The image of a council leader appeared on screen. "Captain Jace Ward, this is High Speaker Larn of the Galactic Council. We recognize your actions on Virelon Prime. The Council offers its thanks for your bravery and protection of innocent life. We request a diplomatic meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss renewed cooperation." Jace stared at the screen. He didn't smile. He didn't respond right away. Then he slowly said they didn't help. They waited until it was safe. Rhea, listening nearby, asked, "What should we do?" Jace took a breath. "We'll respond, but we're not rushing back into their arms. First, we rebuild." At sunrise, a small ceremony was held in the center of the city. Virelon citizens and Terran soldiers stood together. Flags were raised, one for Virelon and one for Earth. Flowers were placed on the names of the fallen. A memorial stone was carved using salvaged materials, with a single message: they came when no one else did. Illyra stepped forward and spoke to the crowd. "Today we remember those who gave their lives for this world. We remember the brave. And we honor the promise that stood between destruction and survival, made not with words, but with action." Then Jace stepped beside her. He looked over the crowd and spoke simply. "We are not heroes. We are not saviors. We are just people who didn't forget." The crowd was silent. Then the applause began. Soft at first, then louder. It echoed across the broken city, across the hills, up toward the sky. That night, under the stars, Illyra and Jace walked through the quiet ruins. "You could leave now," she said. "Your mission is done." Jace looked at the sky, then back at her. "We didn't come just to fight. We came to stand with you, for as long as we're needed." Illyra smiled. "Then maybe we can begin again." And for the first time in many nights, the stars above Virelon Prime shined without fear. Weeks passed on Virelon Prime, and the city slowly began to breathe again. The fires had died. The skies were clear. Flowers started to bloom in gardens once crushed by war. Children played in streets once filled with danger. The noise of battle was replaced with the sound of rebuilding. Hammers, tools, voices full of purpose. But deep inside the hearts of the people, one memory remained strong: the day the humans came back. At the center of the colony, a new building rose. It was not a government office nor a military base. It was called the Hall of Unity, built with human steel and Virelon crystal. The walls carried carvings of the battle. At the front stood a statue, two figures, one human and one Virelon, side by side, weapons lowered, hands outstretched in peace. Inside, people met daily to plan food deliveries, shelter repairs, and medical care for the wounded. No one asked where you were from. No one asked your species. Everyone worked together now. Captain Jace Ward sat in a meeting room with Illyra and a few Terran officers. They looked over maps of other colonies in the White outer systems. "There are more like us," Illyra said. "Small worlds, abandoned, attacked, waiting for help that never came." Jace nodded. "We can't save them all, but we can reach out. We can send a signal." Rhea, standing beside him, added, "We can remind them. Humanity hasn't disappeared. We're still here, still watching." Jace stood up and walked to the large comm station. He pressed his palm to the console. "Argus, prepare a galaxy-wide transmission." The AI responded. "Message channel open, recording when ready." Jace took a breath. "Begin broadcast." "This is Captain Jace Ward of the TSS Revenant. We came to Virelon Prime because no one else did. The people here called out for help. The council stayed silent, but we heard them. Humanity has not forgotten the galaxy. We have not forgotten those we once called allies. We may not be part of your councils, your politics, or your trade alliances, but when innocent lives are in danger, we will come. We don't need permission to do what is right. To every forgotten world, to every lost voice, send your signal. The void is darkened, but sometimes it answers. End transmission. The message spread like wildfire. It reached the outer rim, where forgotten colonies played it on loudspeakers. Miners paused their work. Children watched with wide eyes. Some cheered, some cried. It reached neutral planets, who began speaking of the humans with respect again, no longer as a broken race, but as silent guardians, and it reached the Galactic Council. There, in the grand chambers of polished marble and floating displays, leaders watched Jace's face on the screen. They could not ignore it. They could not deny it. One by one, messages arrived in return, some from leaders asking for talks, some from civilians offering thanks, and some from planets begging for help. Back on Viralon, the Revenant's hangar buzzed with life. Supply ships landed. Drones delivered medicine and fuel. The humans did not stay alone. They began forming a new network. Not an empire, not a government, a promise. The Terran Watch. A group of humans and allies who would respond where no one else would. Jace didn't want to be a hero. He didn't want power, but people listened to him because he had done what no one else dared. Illyra joined him in the hangar holding a small box. "What's this?" Jace asked. "A gift," she said. "From the people." He opened it. Inside was a small metal badge shaped like a star with a line through the center. She smiled. "We call it the star that split the dark. You gave us hope when we had none." Jace looked at the badge, then placed it on his chest beside his Terran patch. "It belongs to everyone," he said softly. That night, a soft celebration filled the colony. No loud fireworks, no grand speeches, just food, lights, and music. In the central square, the stars above shined brighter than ever. Illyra and Jace walked among the people, greeting families, shaking hands, accepting thanks they never asked for. Relin approached with a plate full of sweet cakes. "Captain, Dr. Illyra, you must—" "Try these," Jace laughed. "If I eat another one, I'll need a bigger uniform." Illyra chuckled. "That can be arranged." They sat near a fire watching the children dance to strange but beautiful music, part Virellon, part Terran, a symbol of the new world. In the distance, the Revenant stood ready, silent, strong, watching the stars. Inside, new recruits trained. Officers planned the next journey. Medical bays were restocked. The ship had become more than a weapon. It had become a beacon, not of war, of hope. Soon, Jace and his team would leave Virellon Prime. There were other signals, other cries, other lives needing help. But their story here would never be forgotten. People would tell their children. When no help came and the night was darkest, a human ship screamed from the void, and it brought the fire that saved us all.